Good evening and welcome to the Ball Order podcast. This is Straight Talk for Sports Fans, episode 1 of Straight Red, our football show. I'm Anand Ashok and I'm joined by Arvind Vasudevan. Hi Arvind, how are you doing? How's your day been today?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm joining you from rainy Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. It's very Manchester weather here right now. It almost feels like I'm watching like a fixture in Old Trafford right now. But yeah, it's been pretty good. Can't complain. What about you? Still based in London, Anand?
Yeah, based in London. It's been surprisingly sunny today here, believe it or not. We've had about a week and a half's rain. It's been a pain in the arse that we can't get outside, but finally some good weather. So yeah, it's been a good day. It's a good Sunday. Yeah.
It's talking about sunny. The thing, it must be a pretty sunny time to be an Arsenal fan as well, because what we're going to talk about, listeners, is we're going to talk a bit about the transfer window, right? And I have clouds, dark clouds hovering over me quite literally when I think back to deadline day, the window slamming shut on October 5th. So what we plan to do is, oh, let's not even go there. But you know what? Let's actually go there, right?
Yeah.
Like I think what you should talk about is maybe give a bit of a lowdown from a fan's perspective, right? Me about United and you about Arsenal, about what we really thought about the transfer window. What do you rate ourselves out of 10? A signing that we're particularly excited about, and what we feel is the biggest miss, right? If like there's something
Yeah.
that we've changed about our like transfer window activity, what would that be and why would that be? Right.
Yeah.
So maybe if that works, I'll get us kicked off, right?
Yeah,
So
go for it. Go for it.
so
What do you
United, I
think of
think
United?
we got another Ed Woodward special, is what I would say. It was probably like it depends, right? Like when it ended, it felt like a 2 out of 10, right? It really
Yeah.
felt like a window where it was a massive missed opportunity, a chance to really establish ourselves now that we've made ourselves back to the Champions League,
Mm.
and it was frittered away. Then I spent some time just like getting it all out of my brain, and I think it's not as bad as I thought it was initially. It's probably closer to like a 5, which still doesn't make it a particularly good window.
Yeah.
Um, the way I think about it is two things, right? Number one, what's actually changed in the first team? And the answer is not much, right? Like we've got Alex Telles in, however you pronounce his name the right way, but he's still got a battle to displace Shaw. Shaw's pretty decent defensively, though that wasn't seen in our mauling
Yeah.
by Spurs of all lads at Spurs and Spurs Recta. So it wasn't very pretty. But we've not really improved the first level, and that's a bit concerning, right?
Yeah.
Going in, there were a few obvious priorities. There was right wing, right? Pretty obvious. We've not had a good right winger for probably 5 years right now. Probably a more mobile DM, right? Like it feels like we've got some decent defensive midfielders, but none that actually can do what we need if you have to play both Pogba and Bruno in the same system.
Yeah.
A much pacier centre back. Maguire's he's got the turning radius of the Titanic, right? You
Yeah.
need somebody who is much faster if you have to play Maguire and a high line. That's not happened, and we probably needed like a left back, because it's clearly Williams with his right footedness couldn't play there. I
Yeah.
think we achieved one of those things, which is
No,
really really worrisome.
I definitely agree with that. I think from an outsider, sometimes you can almost see some of the gaps. Like for example, as an Arsenal fan last year, I was constantly clamoring for us to sign a right winger when other people could clearly see we needed a solid box-to-box midfielder or something like that, or just a DM to give us that spine. So I think from an outside point of view, I completely agree with what you've said. I know a lot of fans wanted Sancho, for example, for your right wing, but I think you've highlighted it perfectly. It wasn't just Sancho that you needed. It was that centre back who's quick, has the recovery pace, allows Maguire to go wandering as he does all the time, but at the same time have that mobile DM who's not only screening but also able to take the ball off the back four. I mean, the kind of regista
Yeah.
as you often like having in your team, but watching Serie A in particular. I mean, someone who can play that role is probably what you needed. Just release Bruno and Pogba and almost
The
unleash
guy
it.
we need is honestly, if I could jump in, the guy we need is probably one of our coaches. Like we just need a young Michael
Yeah,
Carrick, right?
yeah,
Somebody who's positionally, extremely aware, who's very disciplined, who knows, is intelligent about like orchestrating play, can play one touch, but can
Yeah.
also be sound defensively to make sure that you have an extra man when you're caught up on the field. That's what we're missing. And that's not to say that, Matic was that player 5 years ago.
Yeah.
He's 32,
Sure.
2-year contract was like, I think 3-year contract was shocking to me. Just keep reflecting the mistakes that we're making, the malaise at the club. We keep giving these massive contracts, and actually that's one of the things that we failed at this window. We couldn't get rid of our deadwood, right? In the end, we give Diego Dallo out. We send out like Pereira. No, Lazio are not going to buy him for 27 million euros. He's probably
Yeah.
worth like 15 million at best, right? Even if he's having his best
Tops.
season out there. So it seems like, we failed on the outgoings to a large extent, right? We did get Sanchez out, which was a pretty big win, no doubt about that. Obviously, we had to pay him off to get him out there. But I
Still
think that was
good
a big
business.
problem.
I think it's still good business, what you've done there. I mean, he was never going to play for the club again. And this is where I think sometimes as Arsenal fans, definitely, we get caught up in the whole finances, or sell this guy, sell that guy, get the money in. And I think United are doing that to an extent. I feel like United had a very kind of Arsenal of 5 years type window, 5 years ago type window, where it was really mess around, don't get anyone out, don't get into the positions you need in quick enough, and then suddenly 2-3 days before the end of the window, you go out there and just see who's available, and then possibly pay big money for them, like Cavani in particular, I think is an example of that. But yeah, I mean, coming back to the initial point we were talking about, in terms of getting people out, sometimes what you did with Sanchez, and we'll talk about Arsenal in a second, but what we did with Mkhitaryan, now we can pretend that swap
that never happened, right?
But what happened with both of those, in my view, was good business. You get them off the books, you're clearing the deadwood out, but at the same time, you're also clearing, well, in our case, £200,000 a week off the wage bill. In your case, it's 300 and God knows what.
75 plus the Champions League bonus as well, considering that was built into his contract of 25%. It's just ridiculous, terrible business, right? Overall. But yeah.
And I think what makes it worse is that you've got other people in that side who are coming through the system, a Martial, a Greenwood, who's thinking, God, that guy's on whatever it is, obscene 400, 500,000 a week. They're doing nothing. And I'm here busting my balls essentially to get 50, 60. And it just messes up the whole structure. And that's where you start seeing these stupid contracts being given out, I guess, I know Luke Shaw is a good player, but should he be on?
He's on crazy money, 120,000, something crazy.
I think it's close to 200 is what I heard. It was 190 or something.
There's definitely a bit of like, when it comes to United, people do, I feel, pump the price up. That's not to say that's a well-run club, right? It's like Woodward doesn't know what he's doing. The director of football conversation. I think that's the big takeaway for me. This just reiterates that United cannot be a top club in the future without appointing a director of football. You can't have business and financial people in charge of the sporting project. It just doesn't work. It's reiterating to me that if this doesn't change in the next few years, we could go down the path of AC Milan, right? We will still have like the clout and the money to make a splash once in a while, but it almost feels like they perversely enjoy all the speculation because it's great for the clicks, it's great for marketing, it's great for fan engagement, however you define that. But it's not great for fan happiness, and it's terrible from a sporting perspective. This last-minute trolley dash of the bargain aisle, and it's not even a bargain aisle. You're paying like big money for bargain players, right? Cavani, to be honest, both Cavani and Higuain are like, both were great at Napoli for years.
Yeah.
Never really rated them, right? I still probably rate them more than Morata, right? Who does everything except score in a weird way, right? But they're not the top echelon of like strikers, right? They're like N-1 and they're old, right? So it's not a signing that screams like intent. It's not a signing that it's probably like the only metric on which it's a clear success, I think, is it's a big upgrade on Ighalo, who's completely looked out of his depth. Right? And he's probably on similar wages to Ighalo, who's on pretty penny, by the way. So I guess that's the only way in which it's good. And maybe there's a world in which Cavani does really well. But it just goes against this whole, we're going to be doing a cultural reboot. We're not going to pay big money for stars who are over the hill.
Yeah.
We're not going to pay huge money to agents. When all of that went out of the window because of desperation. So that was clearly a problem. Telesh is a good player. I've heard really good things
He
about
is.
him. He's got some pretty ridiculous stats. He won't be able to take penalties. So that's going to pull some of those goal stats down. But
Yeah.
19 goals and assists and 31 appearances last year in Liga NOS. He was the best player
That's
in that
unreal.
league after Bruno left. That's ridiculous for a left back. So I'm pretty excited about him. Right, like
Yeah.
our creativity out wide has been rubbish to say the least.
Yeah.
Van
No, I
de
think
Beek.
that's yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No. I was going to say that Teles, I think, or Teles. I think that's a very good signing, particularly in a team such as yours, where you've had a lot of reliance, in fact, on the central guys often to create. I mean, Fernandez is there spamming. I mean, we joke that he keeps losing the ball, but come on, he's a fantastic player when he's on song. He reminds me of Alexis playing for us, where he kept
Very
getting heat.
similar.
He got a lot of heat from the fans because he loses the ball. But if he doesn't try it, we didn't create. And in the same way, I think Bruno has a very similar effect on you. But I think Alex Tellers coming in on the left-hand side, that really gives you that option of creating. It lets you pull Rashford and Martial closer together as well. Rashford can drift in off the wing, and I think altogether it makes you a completely different proposition. So I think that's a good signing. But yeah, no, you were about to talk about Van der Beek. I mean, obviously, I think that's your best signing. I think he's a fantastic player. Why don't you tell the guys a bit about what you think about him?
So the thing is going in, right? Like the option in my mind was Grealish versus Van de Beek,
Yeah.
and I think that calculus went to the window as soon as Aston, like Villa, stayed up, right? I would have taken Grealish only because I think he can both play on the left, he can also play as part of a midfield three, and his ability to like both beat the press and pick out the right pass and not lose possession is a
Yeah.
very unique set of skills, right? It's like a movie dialogue. I've got a unique set of skills that I can use
Yeah.
in circumstances, and
Yeah.
Grealish has shown that in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Van de Beek is a fantastic player, but he seems like a player who would do really well, almost like a Thomas Mueller in a system that
Yeah.
works, right? I don't think he's the person who's going to create something out of nothing. He's all about those quick one-touch passes, like getting into the right pockets of space. I just don't know if the teams are the place in which they can use him
Yeah.
the way he needs to, or they have the awareness to pick him out, right? That's my worry with Van de Beek. But yes, he's a good signing because we needed a backup for Bruno. Like he was
Yeah.
basically like working, like he was like running on fumes towards the end.
Yeah.
Um, I'd get slaughtered for this, but I think there's a future in which we do sell Pogba, buy a
Yeah.
better defensive midfielder, and play a midfield three of Bruno, Van de Beek, and
100%.
my dream signing would be somebody like Camavinga, right? Multifunctional DM who can sit back
Yeah.
and effectively do that role. But I have serious doubts about whether Pogba wants to be there. He's a world-class player. Don't get me wrong; like he's one of the most talented players in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just hasn't managed to put it together, right? So that's where kind of I stand on Van de Beek.
Yeah.
And it's a good signing. It's a good signing. Don't get me wrong.
I agree with you. I agree with you. The only thing that I would possibly question is in terms of, and let's make this clear. I would have taken Van der Beek at Arsenal. I think he's a brilliant. I mean, he's the kind of number 8/number 10 who he keeps the ball. As you said, he doesn't do particularly extravagant things with it, but he's brilliant at receiving the ball, laying it off. That Ajax team was fantastic to watch with people
Just
like
great to
him,
watch. Yeah.
with Frankie de Jong in that midfield. And one thing which really struck me about him when he's come on for you guys so far, it's just the way you keep the ball so much better in that final third. I find when he's on the pitch, and it's not that he's not creating an opening or a little chance here and there. There was a little flick he did in one of your games that I was watching.
Yeah. Tomato.
Yeah, that's the one. I mean, yes, it was against Luton, but it's that kind of thing where it's very simple, but you're keeping the ball and you're creating. And I think that's something which works really well in teams which play possession. From watching you guys, I mean, yes, you have a larger amount of the ball now than you did a year ago, but it feels like a lot of it's built around that quick transition. And I was wondering, is he really the priority here, or should you have really gone out for, especially if you weren't going to get Sancho, was Grealish a kind of better option as someone who's going to take the ball, run with it, and just help with that transition? So it's it's where it's a fantastic player. Is he the best? We'll find out. It depends on how he plays.
He's probably the right player in like the wrong window, so to
Yeah,
speak, or he's the right player if you had also managed to like clean up the three gaping holes to the spine
yeah,
of your team. And I would actually say like everyone's like, oh, it was like Sancho or bust.
yeah,
Sancho's a great player, right? Don't get me wrong. He's a fantastic player, extremely efficient. His decision
mhm,
making's off the charts. He's young. He's English. He fits the profile, right? No doubt
yeah.
about that. But what we really needed, if like there's one player I'd say we really missed out that would have been perfect, is somebody like Upamecano, right? If you're not going to
Oh
spend that
God,
money on
yeah.
Sanchez, on Sancho, go and
Sancho,
spend it
yeah,
on Upamecano, right? He had a release clause, right? Next year, you're not going to get him. It's as simple as that,
yeah.
right? There are going to be multiple teams out there who are willing to pay his 42 million euros release clause, and we're likely not going to be in the Champions League, right? Prediction for the season, it doesn't look like it's going to be the case right now, right? And then
Yeah,
there's not
that's
probably not going to be too many United fans who are going to say otherwise. Which just brings us back to the cycle that we keep going through. Every single time we get in the Champions League, we underinvest and then we have to overpay to get back in,
yeah,
rinse and repeat. We still pay out like 89 million pounds of dividends in the last 5 years. So I guess the Glazers are happy, but the club is rotting from a sporting project perspective, and it is a bit painful to watch, right? Like it's completely self-inflicted. People,
yeah.
Woodward's a Liverpool fan growing up, and to be honest, like he's done everything that I
I
would
didn't know
want to
that
do as a
actually.
Liverpool fan.
Yeah,
If I was running Manchester United,
yeah,
um, it's ridiculous. The one thing I will say though, like which I am excited about, is the two youngsters that you've gotten,
mhm,
right? Traore looks like a serious talent. I've heard him described as like the next best thing to Ansu Fati.
yeah,
Um, I've watched a fair amount of him. Obviously, YouTube videos set to shitty music can only tell you so much about how good a
yeah,
player is, right? But based on the music of he can do what he can do is I think the song that was there, and he does seem like he can do a fair amount to be honest.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
pretty good. He's quick. The ball sticks to him. He's got a bag of different tricks. He seems like pretty good at holding people off, even though he's not grown to the body. Low center of
Mhm.
gravity. I'm very excited about him. So if the brief is like if we can't buy the current Sancho, and I think the Sancho like train
Yeah,
has sailed, like that ship is gone.
I think so.
We're not going to go back and get him. I think we bought some two serious talents, but it's not going to solve anything for us right now. So overall, just coming back to our window, feels like a missed opportunity. That's kind of the headline. If you're
Yeah,
not spending on Sancho, at least go and like buy a better DM or and get some of the deadwood out. We failed on that.
absolutely.
Um, Center back position, we're stacked on center backs made out of glass. The guy behind me. So it hasn't been a great window. It's completely dissipated the sense of like optimism that was building around the club when he finished third and reached three semifinals last year. It's going to be a long, painful season. There's going to be the specter of Pochettino all over Solskjaer. Um,
Yeah,
it's not going to be a fun ride, but it's definitely going to be a bit of a ride as United fans. That's kind of my summary of this transfer window.
yeah. So what was that? A 5 out of 10 you gave it overall on
Uh,
reflection?
it's a 5 out of 10 when I think long term. When I think short term, it's probably much lower, right? We've bought in some serious
Yeah,
players and got some good loans out. Like I think there's a player in Dallo. I think there's a player in Chong, right? We
yeah,
probably will make decent money for them from those loans. Two
yep.
very good youngsters have been brought in. But yeah, we've just failed to like strengthen the first team squad for the season ahead. And we
Yeah,
don't have a coach who's set up to bring the best out of his limited resources, and he needs A-list players, right? So
yeah,
it seems like we've had like, and this is like you say inshallah ball, this is inshallah transfer strategy, kind of like hit
yeah,
and hope. Try to be
yeah,
strong and fail and not get the players you want in and overpay. It's like you do everything that you set out not to do and still do it badly. So it's impressively bad. It's a Woodward special. Like him and his chief negotiator Matt Judge. Matt Judge can't judge shit. He's
yeah,
absolutely rubbish. Probably people walk into a negotiation with him and they just like laugh their asses off and they walk away with a pretty decent
yeah.
paycheck. That's Manchester United. It's not a pretty look. It's a bit of a rant from my side to start off the season, but there's going to be some interesting weeks ahead. You back the team,
Who
but
knows?
that
Yeah,
doesn't mean you need to back the ownership of the club. Those are fundamentally different things. And I think that there's this kind of like there's this weird set of like United fans that think that they're alpha just because they back everything that happens to the club.
top Reds. Yeah,
And yeah, top Reds, top
yeah,
fans. Oh my God, you're not a real glory hunt. It's rubbish, right? Like
yeah,
it's visible to any rival fan is like sitting there with popcorn, just munching away, thinking about like how United went from being the most
yeah.
feared
The
team on the
mine's just
planet.
over there somewhere. Yeah,
exactly to a bunch of rabble. So
Yeah.
that's the Manchester United like transfer window from my side. What about you, Anand? Do you agree with that? Like
No,
maybe
for
something I
sure.
got wrong there?
No, for sure. I think, as I said at the start, often a transfer window looks different from an outside perspective than it does from inside. But in this case, I think I 100% agree with what you've said. From the outside, it just looked a mess. It just looked like it got towards the end of the window and they thought, how the hell are we going to sell more shirts? And they said, okay, who's the biggest name out there who's available? And then they went and got Cavani. And I think giving him the number 7 shirt. You didn't talk about this, but
I didn't want to talk about it.
I feel like that that's just so tone deaf, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, the Cavani signing on the whole, I don't see a massive issue with it. I don't think it's a great. I mean, I'll be surprised if it turns out to be a brilliant signing, but it could work. Who knows? But the fact that number 7 shirt all summer was meant to be for Sancho, it's just the way the the ownership, the Woodward, they just don't seem to know what the fans want, and it's that disconnection, which happily actually brings me to talk about Arsenal, and I've been sitting here eagerly ready to talk about this.
Yeah, it's definitely time to get the party started
Yeah,
on
and all
the
the fun.
Arsenal edition of this Transfer
Yeah,
Window podcast, which is
yeah,
coming up immediately after this.